Ultra? Nope. LF? Not needed. Recoome Guldo show that even a 1% sparking can have top tier animations. This is animation review. Like 4 months late, I know, I'm sorry. The first thing I want to mention about these guys is actually their shading. Compared to the old Ginyu Force characters, they look very different. Legends always used to use this darker style of shading with smooth shadows, but for modern units they use this brighter, more stylized cell shading that's more accurate to the show and, I think, a definite improvement. Something else I haven't mentioned before, idle animations. These guys have all brand new idle animations, and I'm only really mentioning them because I think Recoome's is great. It's very satisfying to watch. It feels very weighty but goofy as well, which really fits Recoome's character. I love the uniqueness in Recoome's cover change. Him getting hit in the stomach, then reversing it and throwing the enemy is so great because it not only shows how strong he is, but also that he's not really taking the fight very seriously, which again shows his character. The poses here are also really great, from the punch itself to the massive windup for the throw. I also like how they hold onto this close-up of Recoome, and alongside the lighting here, it does a great job of adding impact to a relatively short animation. Now, I absolutely love Guldo's cover change. This animation is so good, it was obviously very well thought out, and it fully utilizes Guldo and his powers. This is easily the best Guldo animation in this game, and is probably the best he will ever get. We start with a great impact as Guldo stops time at the very last moment before the enemy's punch lands, which of course scares Guldo because he's Guldo. Now a great bit of detail here is that he is actually holding his breath to stop time like he's supposed to, and right at the end he very clearly exhales, which causes time to resume. I absolutely love that kind of attention to detail. Also, the blast here looks amazing. The way it starts with the impact of the time stop ending and the fact that it's green makes it feel completely unique. There's also detail in the blast itself. The way it starts out sort of bunched up as it impacts with the enemy, then taking a normal shape as it blasts through them. This animation is so much better and more detailed than it even needed to be, and I hope you can see why I love it so much. Onto their rising rush poses, I really like the energy and speed of Recoome's animation. There's also a surprising amount of detail in his movement, and I like how we zoom in and then suddenly zoom out to emphasize the final pose. And one more detail at the end is how he throws his hands up in the air before charging forward. Guldo's is also pretty detailed for the kind of animation it is, but not as much as Recoome's. The pose itself is cool, but his face does look strange, though I guess that's just Guldo. Their windscreen has got to be one of the most detailed in the game. Most windscreens are basically someone falling into frame and doing a pose, but these guys actually have detailed animation. We'll start with Recoome, who does this spin right over Guldo's head and past the camera, then jumps into the air before hitting his final pose. And notice the way he jumps and twists his body in the opposite direction of his final pose, which is a great use of anticipation. Then Guldo is doing something with his hands, and it is very well animated and visually interesting. He then shifts his weight to the side, swinging his hands, again to create anticipation for the final pose. What an incredibly detailed windscreen. I really like the timing of Recoome's strike. It starts with evenly spaced hits, then 2 quick hits, followed by the last big hit at the end. I also like the way Recoome is animated here. He's very loose and floaty while still being weighty, which is definitely fitting for his character. And this last hit is great. I love the exaggerated wind-up on Recoome along with the cartoonish comedic wind-up on Guldo, and the pose of their punch at the end is great as well. When it comes to Guldo's strike, I really like that they have him swinging his arms in circles like a child. They really lean into Guldo being sort of a joke character, and I actually don't mind that as it really helps him stand out against the rest of the Ginyu Force and gives him a personality that they can actually work with in his animations. I also really like how when Recoome comes in, he towers over Guldo and takes up most of the frame, really emphasizing the size difference between them. Starting with Recoome's green card, I think the most important thing to mention here is the incredible amount of detail in the movement here. These Ginyu Force units have some of the most detailed character animation in this game, and that combined with the interesting poses, how in sync they are, the timing of the animation, and the way the camera moves to accentuate their movements makes their green card so satisfying to watch. And they use these sparkly particles as they hit their poses, which is really nice and fitting. And a lot of the same things can be said about Guldo's green card. I mean, just look at what's going on here. They don't just go from pose A to pose B. They put all of these extra movements in between, which just adds so much detail. There's so much going on here, it's difficult to even mention all of it. Let's just take a look at the camera movements. We start looking up as Recoome comes down from the top and Guldo raises his hands into the air. The camera follows them as they both bend down, and it tilts to follow Recoome's angled pose. Then it rotates around them as Recoome turns in the opposite direction as they hit their first pose. Then it slowly pulls out as they do their extra movements I mentioned before, building tension for the final pose where the camera suddenly zooms in and then tilts in the opposite direction to frame Recoome's final pose. There's so much going on in all their animations, I don't even have time to mention it all, so we have to move on. Onto another killer animation, Recoome's blue card. I like the way we start following behind Recoome as we move on to Guldo as he slides into frame. And I do like the animation of Guldo coming in here. We also have to appreciate the paralysis particles here. These long winding particles that shoot out and the colors of the effects in the center. It's so great. Next up we get this awesome expression on Recoome and some great animation on him, added to by the small detail of some effects on his hands as he hits these poses. The aura he gets here is awesome, and I love how stylized it is, which it can get away with since it's only going to be seen from one angle. Then we get this zoom in and hold with a camera shake, which adds a lot of emphasis to the upcoming explosion, which itself looks beautiful. It starts with a streak of light that slices across the screen, then everything turns white and we get this awesome ball of energy. I love the colors in it and the shockwaves surrounding it. Then at the end we get Recoome's silhouette in the center, which is a very nice touch. And I'm almost embarrassed to admit that until I slowed it down, I never noticed that Guldo also gets hit with the explosion, and he was just standing there politely still holding the enemy, which is all a really fun bit of detail. Guldo's blue card seems more simple at first, but I really like it. Starting with his starting pose, I like the amount of detail put into it, which is kinda rare. The pose is cool and I like the subtle lighting on him. Getting into the actual animation, let's just look at the care and attention put into how characters fly into and out of frame. The enemy gets headbutted off screen, then Recoome flies in and flies past the camera. We get another awesome paralysis effect, then the camera pulls out and looks up to reveal Recoome charging in. He's already winding up a massive kick with an awesome exaggerated pose, and the way this is framed makes him just tower over the enemy. He unleashes his kick and we get this impact with a great pause on contact. Then the camera flies back with the enemy, who then flies even faster off screen. Meanwhile, Recoome follows through with an entire backflip after his kick to show how much force was put into it. This animation is pretty short and seems simple, but if you look at the effort that was put into it, you can really start to appreciate it. Two awesome characters for one amazingly animated unit, and I think I have to give these guys a 9 out of 10. And I'm sorry this video has taken so long to come out, but I really did get it out as soon as I could. And I actually don't even know what my next video is going to be, so please feel free to leave me some suggestions, and thank you for watching.